to see what is happening. Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to be here. I'm going to wait and see if this actually will let us join on LinkedIn. I'm going to give us a few seconds. This is so StreamYard. This is
Gotta
so
love it. Gotta love it.
And if not, we're gonna go ahead and go with our conversation anyway, and I might just end up sending it inside some notes because I just hit tap to join, and it looks like we are live. Well, all right,
Yay.
it worked. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. I'm so excited to have Courtney Robinson here today. For those of you who tried to log in last week, technology won a battle. Technology won Sybil 0. And so I'm going to do the speaker series on December 4th at 8 a.m. Taking off next week. I hope everyone who is celebrating has a happy holiday, a happy Thanksgiving. But the following week on December 4th at 8 a.m., I'm going to do the keynote series session that was originally intended for last week, but it's okay. If y'all have any other ideas outside of StreamYard, I am open. Please put that in the chat. Because StreamYard is not winning for me right now in 2024. So, but moving forward, you all already know Brand Like Jesus. This is a series that I entered in a couple of weeks ago, just unpacking the journey of Jesus, why the brand has lasted over 2,000 years, and what we can learn as Christ followers on what it means to be more like him. I've been getting so many interesting DMs recently, and Courtney, we can talk about all of this as well. But when I started this series, it's starting to invite people, it's like there are some people who are super excited. It was like, oh, this is so cool. Some people who are lukewarm about it. And then I've been getting people who are repelled by my brand, and that is okay too. Feeling some type of way that I'm using Jesus as the reference for building a powerful brand. So I want to hear from you. You are also a Christ follower, on what you believe this series can do for you as a business owner. But we're going to jump into all of that later. I'm going to see if my banner even still works. Yes, it does.
Yay.
I know.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Courtney Robinson, leadership branding strategist, here today. Courtney, please take a few minutes to tell the listeners what it is you do, how you do what you do, and how you got into this work.
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to thank you for the invitation to join you in this conversation. I've been excited about conversing with you as well. And so, yes, I am Courtney Robinson, leadership branding strategist and image expert, and founder of Image by Courtney. And so, as a speaker, what I do is specialize in empowering women leaders to command presence by aligning their personal style with their purpose. And so I developed a framework, which is called the Purpose Palette Persona, and it really reveals how intentional style can amplify confidence and influence someone's, or women, in my case, enhance their influence, and then elevate their impact. So I have over 20 years of global leadership experience. And so what I'm here to really do is inspire women to fully step into their potential, transform the way they lead and how others see them, right? I really want us to show up, as the best representative of who we are in the kingdom. So, really passionate about helping women embody their purpose and their authenticity, which again allows them to show up in a way that resonates very powerfully and makes them memorable. So
That is fabulous. That is absolutely fabulous. So I want to jump right in because y'all, today is more about Q&A and we're going to talk about Courtney's business, of course, but I really wanted to dive into what it looks like for us as Christian business leaders and how we function differently in God's economy versus the world's economy. So, Courtney, as
Right.
a fellow Christ follower, how do you align with God's purpose while maybe still serving a secular audience?
That's a really great question because I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I really wasn't, talking about or integrating my faith into my business.
Mm,
Because at that point, it really hadn't dawned on me, or God hadn't shown me through my business how He was going to work in and through me, right? It took me going through some things to really realize how important my testimony would be in my business, and how that would cause me to pivot in a way that, caused me to embrace my faith, if you will. So I think what makes it it's different in God's economy than it is in the world, is that we are faith driven, right? And we're unapologetically, ready to testify and give our testimony and talk about the that God has impacted us, especially in our purpose and how we're moving in the world. And I think that's really important for non-believers to see, because we are called, to, disciple and all of that. So I think it's just really important for us to show up as who God made us to be, and not be, not apologize that we have a faith bent, if you will.
yeah.
And so what that means for our, secular, customers, is that here's how I feel about principles, because I really think at the core of it, your faith or your inner values and your beliefs, those are principles. We all have principles, whether you're Christian or not. So I do encourage clients who may not resonate or identify with Christianity to dig into their principles and their core values, because those are foundational and
Yeah.
those should guide you. But ideally, I'm speaking to those of us who are in Christ and understand that that's where our purpose comes from. And that's what we're here to do, is to show up and to influence the kingdom for Him. So,
Ooh, so good. To influence the kingdom. I tell people my business is my ministry, and I never looked at it
mm,
in that way until God really, uh, through testimony, right? Because we went through some things.
mhm,
Um, but to know that this could be a ministry, that it is okay to say building an image is a ministry, building a brand is a ministry. And what does that look like in the kingdom? How does that help serve not only others but God's, purpose for us? And I battled with that as well, because I was like, God, I don't feel good about telling people, their brand is terrible. But then I realized, right, God wants their business to flourish as well, which means
right.
they need a solid brand, which means they do need people like you, people like me, to step in
Mhm,
on their behalf, and to be that lens that they need to see. So I think that is
right.
amazing that you too have a testimonial. You said something really key as well, and I think this is what this call is all about, right? Like, this is for
Mhm.
the women who feel like they are in pivot, in transition, and just really trying to get that clarity around their brand. From your perspective, and I tell people, I know I've rebranded several times. Do you know how many times you've had to rebrand before you got to this that feels like the
Wow.
fullest you?
Yeah, several times. So my business is a little over 7 years old.
Hmm.
So, hmm, I wouldn't quite say annually, but probably 4 or 5 times. There have been so many different iterations. And I would say that it's been growth, right? It's been evolution,
Yeah.
because I feel like everything I do is getting me closer to where God really wants me to be, in terms of how He wants me to show up, and, how He wants me to serve women.
Yeah.
Every time I speak, I feel like I get a new or a deeper revelation of what I'm really here to do.
Yeah.
And understanding that what I do is not in conflict or competition with anybody else, but that, you know, I have a purpose and I have a calling, and I'm responsible for living that out, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there have been a few iterations, and I think the latest one came at the end of 2023
Mhm.
when I knew that either I was going to hang this up because it was a glorified hobby, or I was going to press into where God really needed me to be. And so when I stopped leaning on other people for what I knew God placed inside of me,
Yes.
it really changed the game in terms of my business, right? So that's what it was for me. I wasn't trusting myself. I wasn't trusting the Holy Spirit within me, you know, and I had to realize God has equipped me with everything I need to be
Mm.
who He has called me to be, right? And when you lean into that, there's no way that you cannot grow, in the things of God and in your business. So,
Absolute. Look, I could stop
mhm.
the stream right here because that was an entire word.
Yeah,
Um, so right, but it's when you make the shift, and so
right,
often I have to correct not only myself but some of the women that I work with. They're like, "Well, if I do this," I'm like, "No, this is a when conversation. Like when
right,
you make this shift,
right.
here's what you will be able to experience, not only
Mhm.
in terms of financially, but also feeling that oneness and that wholeness that I
Right.
call it my centering in
Mhm.
God and in my purpose. So
Mm.
I think that is so powerful. And
Mhm.
jumping into the work that you do as a leadership branding strategist, how did you come up with that title? Because I play the title game a lot with my
Mhm.
clients. I've even, if people have watched my journey, I've gone through a couple of titles. Today it's rebrand strategist. Who knows what
Mhm.
it might be 2 years from now? But how did you settle on those words?
I love that you asked that because that too was a progression. I don't think it was that way a couple of months ago. I was saying branding strategist, but I added leadership because what I learned is that we're multi-passionate, we're multi, faceted, and God gave us everything that we need. He wants us to use all of it. So I am 20 years in corporate, right? In global leadership, supporting project managers all over the world, within clinical research. There is no way that depth of experience doesn't influence or impact how I serve my clients.
Right.
And so, what I believe fundamentally is that we're all leaders, no matter the space that we're in. And it doesn't matter what your title is, you're leading in some way, right? People are looking to you, whether you consider yourself an influencer or not, you're influencing somebody somewhere in some way. And
Yes.
so I want women to show up as leaders in their space.
Yes.
And so that's why I coined myself in that way. I want the women that I work with to understand that I'm going to help you build that leadership prowess
Yes.
and to make sure that that expertise that you carry aligns with how you're showing up, because that's the gap for me. I meet a lot of women who are really brilliant, but if you looked at them you wouldn't necessarily know it,
Right.
right? Because they're not showing up in their full presence, in the fullness of who God made them to be. And I want to amplify that. I want to help women amplify that. And sometimes it's just maybe you're not equipped with the tools, but I am. And that's why I'm here to help you bridge that gap.
Yes.
So that's where it comes from. Leadership branding strategist, and really I'm helping you develop that strategy. I think everybody needs a strategy for their image, right? How they want to show up, how they want to be seen, how they want to be perceived, how
Yeah.
they want to be remembered, right?
Ooh, it's about legacy, right?
Mhm.
I heard a quote yesterday, and I'm going to probably botch it just this much, but the lady said something like, "Your purpose is not who you are, your purpose is the experience people get from you." And
Oh,
that
I
was
love that.
so powerful. And I was like, "Ooh, what experience are people getting from me after I leave the room? Like, what breaks in them? What is rebuilt in them?
Mm,
Because
mm.
I showed up the way I'm supposed to show up." so that
Right.
they can as well. So, yeah, I was like, I probably did it wrong. I'm gonna have to write that quote down.
No, that I love that. I get the idea, and I think everybody else will too. And with that, I want to share a quote that I learned yesterday that I think kind of is complimentary.
Yeah.
The movement we lead is the medicine we need.
Ooh, I told somebody, I said, "Are you taking your own medicine? You better take your own
You
medicine."
know? And that's the truth, because when you think about it, and in coaching, I was just in a conversation around this yesterday, which I think is so pivotal. You know, we are leading
Yes,
and guiding
yes,
and servicing the women that we were several years ago, right?
absolutely.
That's what it's all about. And so, yeah, we can't lead from a place we haven't been.
Mm, you cannot lead from lack.
Yeah, you
You cannot.
can't. And so that's when you talk about testimony, I love that you said that. Like, I'm compelled from what I've been through and where God has brought me through. I am compelled to talk about the goodness of God and how He has placed me where I am. It's not because of Courtney, because trust me, there's no telling where I would be because I've got that shiny object
Shiny object
syndrome
syndrome. Yeah.
type thing, but God keeps me focused, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah. I at first, this is a really we're pivoting. We're gonna come back. Um, right, fearing shiny object syndrome. But what I realized is I had to test and see, right?
Mm,
Without testing and seeing if this was a shiny thing versus the thing, I would not have known.
mm,
And I think so many women in business are fearful of the testing because either it feels like everyone's going to see us mess up, or I don't want to invest that much in this thing, but I take all experience and count them for good. Then I
right.
know even that testing period was because I needed to iterate or something else needed to be pulled out of me, which would have only been because I did this thing that I said didn't work.
Mhm. I love that. I
As
love that. It all works together for our good. Absolutely.
all together. So I'm
Yeah.
going to pivot us back because you said
Okay.
something earlier about being in alignment with purpose.
Mhm.
How can women leaders integrate their values, their core values that you're talking about, into their personal style? Because I know a lot of women who say, "Ooh, but I'm introverted, I'm shy, I don't want to wear bright pink." I'm like, you don't have to wear bright pink for me.
Right.
I just happen to feel
Exactly.
my best Sybil in bright pink. But
Absolutely.
how do you help women do that so that they can stand firm in leadership? And then, second, before I forget this question, how does that look like in the new face of corporate? Because when you and I entered corporate, it was
Mhm.
pearls, skirts to the knee, blue, black, gray, and your
Mhm.
collar better be up here with a modest lip.
Right.
We get to do some
Not this
different,
red.
right? Not this red or this purple lip that I like to wear, but what does that look like for this future leadership line of women?
Well, that's a great question. So let's start with the first part, which is how you're integrating those values and core beliefs into your wardrobe or your outward expression and how you show up. So in my framework, I start with asking people like, what is your purpose? What are you here to do? Because foundationally, you need to know that and dig into that. Be very certain about that, right?
Mhm.
Clarity breeds confidence. That's the first thing. And then, secondly, we move into what are those values, right? What are those core values? So, I have a quiz that people can take, and I list about or maybe 10 or 12 different, like just core values across the board, right? So,
Mhm.
identifying what are those, let's look at those things, and then let's start to see how those play into your purpose, right?
Right.
So those are the first two steps. And then we look at how that connects to the outward expression. And I'm glad you brought up color because color psychology is a big part of the whole connecting your brand to your values. Every color represents something, right?
Mhm.
I think a lot of people or a lot of women are putting on clothes every day and they have no idea the messages that they're sending, not just from the color, but even from the style.
Yeah.
So when you become very intentional about the choices that you're making, then you can start to basically curate how you're showing up, right?
Mhm.
I think a lot of people feel that style is, what's the word? Shallow.
Yeah.
But what it is it's a silent communicator,
Yeah.
because that precedes you. I see you before you have an opportunity to open your mouth. Like when we both jumped on StreamYard, before you could say, "Hi, Courtney," I saw you.
Yeah.
And I saw this bright pink and I saw, your lovely background and how festive that is, which I love. And so those are sending signals to me in my brain. And based on my experience and what I'm going through, I'm already building assumptions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And opinions about things. That's what we do as humans. And so, what I'm saying, when you use your values to impact your image, is you have an opportunity to control that narrative.
Yeah.
What you want, how you want to brand, what you want people to see, what you want to communicate. And let that be as close to your values as possible. And it can be. So we figure out, what are those colors? What are those styles? And then for the second part of what you're saying about how that looks now, is that now you can be more authentic, right?
Yeah.
And you can really show your own um, uniqueness, right? So now we know there are more neutrals that we can integrate.
Yeah.
And we know that there's nothing wrong with a pop of color. It's just about how you integrate it and
Yeah.
different things like that. So, again, just arming people with the tools so that they can dress in a way that honors the spaces that they're in,
Yeah.
but still is a reflection of who they are at the core.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those don't have to be,
They're not
mutually
mutually
exclusive.
exclusive.
They can align, like you said. And that's really 25. That's what my goal, my vision, my theme is all about for 2025, is aligned vision. Because
Ooh.
I feel like we can't move forward in anything unless we're aligned with God's presence and in his vision.
Yeah.
But aligning your vision across your life, across, what you're doing, across your brand. I think all of that is very possible when we're intentional. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it made me think of something I said so often. People are like, "Why are you spending so much time getting ready?" And I said, "Because the scripture says if you're going to do something, you do it in the glory of God. So if you're not showing up as your best self, then I'm going to ask that question: Are you doing this for the glory of God?" And
Right.
then, second to that, I think how we dress teaches people how we want them to treat us, and
Absolutely.
we try to play it down either because we feel like we've got imposter syndrome or we're not feeling quite ourselves that day.
Mhm.
I said, every time I walk out my door, I'm teaching somebody how to treat me. So I get
Absolutely.
to decide what that treatment looks like based off of what I look like.
Absolutely. I've got a great story about that. There's a
Yeah.
grocery store, Ingles, that's not far from where we live. And so sometimes I'm in yoga pants or workout clothes or whatever, because I've got to run and get something from the grocery store, right? And
Yeah.
I do that, I won't say quite often, but I do that on occasion. But over the summer, I happened to be dressed going to an event. I had on a dress and some heels, and of course, my makeup and my hair was done. And I walked into Ingles. You would have thought I was a completely different person the way they treated me.
Yep.
Then when I walked in my yoga pants and my sweats, it was just, business as usual. When I walked in that day, people were smiling and, saying hello. And I mean, people treat you differently when you show up in a way that exudes, that type of confidence and presence and, that type of thing. Clothes have that ability, they have that impact on
Yes.
you and on other people.
Yes.
So to your point, yeah, I'm very aware of when I step out of my home, how I'm dressed, especially in the spaces that I'm going into, because I know that there may be an interaction that, you know, could possibly either, you're either drawing people in or you're repelling them. by how you choose to show up.
The
So,
the grocery store trap, I have a story too. So I when I started doing this, I was like, okay, Sybil, do not leave your house out of brand. And one day I was like, oh my gosh, it's raining, it's cold, it's all the things. I'm gonna just run to the grocery store. And of course, that particular day, someone like stops to have a legitimate conversation with me. And they were like, well, tell me what it is you do. And I'm like, well, I am embarrassed to say that I am a brand specialist because I look foolish. And so right then I had to downplay the work that I do. I was
mhm.
like, oh, I'm a business consultant, right? Like I'm whispering about it instead of being forward because
Mhm.
I did not look the part that one time, and that was the last time that I did a
Right.
run, a grocery run. I said, "Oh, never
Exactly.
again,
Exactly. Yeah.
never
Yeah.
again."
Yeah.
So, absolutely. And then when we think, I think, another word that you said is not just about confidence, but also about grace and poise. Those are
Mhm.
really specific words
Mhm.
that you are using. How does that translate into our world outside of work? Why should women invest in this thing, not only for the workplace, but themselves outside of work?
Their personal life.
Yeah.
Poise is really important. I think poise is all about how we're carrying ourselves and how we're navigating different areas of our lives. So I love that you said that. Your image is just as important in your personal life as it is in your business life. You have children that are watching you and are, growing up and forming opinions and growing into their own, adulthood based on what they see with you. As women, we're largely reflections of what we learned from our moms, right? So if your mom took dressing seriously, you probably do as well, or maybe you don't because you're rebelling against it. I mean, there's so many different, ways that you're impacted by the influences in your life. So again, that goes back to everybody's a leader in some way, right? If you're a wife or a mom, then you're a leader in your home, right? And that's our first ministry. So
Right.
that's why it's so important personally.
Yes.
Um, and being poised doesn't mean you're dressed to the nines all day, every day. It just means that you're paying attention to the details, right? So I was
Mhm.
having this conversation with my women in my style lounge whenever we met last, which was, when I get up on the weekends and it's just me and my husband around the house, I could choose to just roll out, right? Because it's just us. But I'm like, it's my husband and I don't of course he's seen me every kind of way, but it's just out of I guess my own self-respect. I'll get up and I'll shower and I'll, do something to my hair and make sure I may not have makeup on, but I'm putting on some athleisure wear or some lounge wear that's comfortable and clean and different things like that. I'm not just walking around the house looking any kind of way. But I
Yeah.
think that's a personal choice that we have to make, right? And how we want to show up. And, I don't do it for him. I do it for me because it makes me feel a certain kind of way to look put together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it has to stem from how you want to show up first and foremost. Then there's the ripple effect of the impact that it has on other people.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. When me and my boyfriend FaceTime, I'm like, okay, let me angle. And some days he'll say, do you have on makeup? I'm like, no, but let's pretend I do. That's right.
exactly.
But right, I want to, as much as I don't know how long you've been married, like you still need to show
Mhm.
up, look the part, do the
Right,
things, remind them of why
right,
they chose you and you chose them. Like it's
right.
a, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
they say you still whatever you did to get them is what you
You
do to
you
keep
you
them.
keep the
And I mean, ultimately, yeah, my husband and I will be celebrating 10 years next June.
nice.
But, before I met him, this was a part of my life, like showing up in a way that edified God
Mm,
and, represented me well has always been important. So that's something that I wouldn't, forsake for anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was like, this is the you met. So this is the me he met. Let me
Right.
govern myself accordingly.
Exactly.
Um, but one of the real challenges, and I know you've got your style lab, I've got my process as well that I take women through, is they still I do not like these words, imposter syndrome. I strongly and energetically say, and ladies, y'all hear me, I say it several times, you are not an imposter if you went through the things. Like if you went through the things, that's not imposter. Imposter syndrome is for the people who didn't go through the things and are trying to say something. But
Mm.
for the purpose of this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
how does your process help them overcome self-doubt, imposter syndrome? Maybe I've got some mommy daddy issues uh,
Right.
based off of how I was reared, and now I do rebel, but in that rebellion is
Mm-hmm.
my voice. How does this process help with that?
Gosh, that's such a great question because that's at the core of what I do is helping you see you, right? What
Mhm.
are all those things that you love about yourself, right? Not just physically, but even other qualities. And that's where we're focusing, right? And those are the things that we're trying to bring to life through wardrobe. I say dress to your best advantage. And that's what I mean, right? That's what I mean is like, let's get over, the stuff that we can't change and let's focus on the things that we can transform into a way that makes you more visible, that amplifies your impact, because ultimately that's what we're here to do, impact the kingdom and impact other people in ways that build them up, right? And so, how can you do that unless you really understand like the essence of who you are, right? So I work with women on a style statement and I say we're going to coin, 2 to 3 words that explain or express who you are. And that's important because that anchors things, right? When you start to confess or profess who you are, that's you have no choice but to become that,
Yes.
right? That's why the power of our, words is so important.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what that looks like is like, digging into the core of who you are, making sure you understand that, how to properly articulate that. And
Yeah.
then you have to believe it, right? You have to believe that about yourself. You have to believe what God says about you.
Yes.
And, that's what I'm helping women with, that
So good.
that that confidence, in themselves and trusting that who God made you to be is exactly who you need to be.
That's it. No gift envy over here. That's what I call
Right.
it. Please don't have gifts envy, right? Because the same
Right.
gifts you're envying in other people are the ones that they're envying in you. And so often we downplay
Mhm.
and we say, oh, this is just the easy part. I'm like, no, that is your part. That
Yeah,
easy part is your part.
that's
And
right.
that's what I work with so many of my women to say, like, whatever you think is simple and easy, chances are that's where you need to be, whether or not you realize it, because you've either got some reps in, or those are just your, not just, but those are your innate gifts
Right.
that you are called to lead in. It's, yes, this is about leadership. And it doesn't matter how big your platform is, large or small, you need to
Right.
own your stage. And
Right.
speaking of stages,
Mhm.
because I want to talk about this, I know you said you started to really lean into speaking. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I tell every single one of my clients is build your stage, get paid to speak. Like build your stage, get on other people's stages, get paid
Mhm.
to speak. Um, and it's really helped me build my brand as well. That was one of the very first things that I did when I decided to start building my business. Is I said, I need to get paid to do what I do really well, which is run my mouth. How do I do this?
Right.
But you've incorporated speaking in your business as well. What is your speaking platform, and where do you find audiences need you the most?
Sure, that's great. And that's something that developed, throughout this year as well as I started to find my own voice and
Mm-hmm.
really lean into that and trust that my testimony needed to be heard. So I wrote a book that launched this past April, as a part of a book anthology with 15 other women. It's called Stand Up Volume 3, Resilient Black Women of Faith who are shaping the world with their faith. Um, and it's all different types of stories. But in that anthology, I tell my story, my testimony of, living with 4 brain tumors and overcoming stroke recovery, and how if I'm still here, I'm here for a reason, right? And so if God has spared my life and he continues to strengthen me and guide me and move me in this world, I am compelled to share my testimony. So sometimes I speak about that, but I don't really lead with that. More, I'm just talking about the framework that was birthed through that,
Yeah.
right? That purpose palette persona. So I'm in corporate stages, unlike business resource groups, employee resource groups. I was invited to Phillips earlier this year to do a 1 hour workshop, teaching the women how to show up in a way that they could network for growth within the company,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really aligned and I loved it. I spoke to a sales group in Brooklyn a few months ago, which was really awesome. Sisters in sales, and it was just all these like amazing dynamic, women of color who were out there just really doing their thing in sales. And so that was like, it blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
To be in that environment and to see so many like amazing women and to support them in that way. And then I'm getting invited to ministry empowerment groups who do business.
Yeah.
I was recently invited to another speaking event next year. I am in the International Association of Women. I spoke to our chapter about a month ago, and the Fellowship of Extraordinary Women. I'm a member there. They have invited me to do 2 workshops next year. I'm in the Atlanta um, Black Chamber and the Women's League, and I spoke for them earlier this year. So I'm just in spaces that are aligned with my brand that
Right.
allow me to show up and, share about, my framework and how I can help women show up and shine. And so that has been pivotal because it allows me to get my message out there, but it also allows me to connect with the women that I'm drawn to, who are drawn to me, and the opportunity to support them. So that's why I focus on the speaking, because it puts me, in front of a
Yeah.
great a bigger audience, if you will, and then gives me the opportunity to make those connections that are bound to happen. Um, and so I also spoke on over 20 different podcasts this year,
Yeah.
maybe more than that. I probably need to like start keeping count of that, but in different spaces. And so some of those podcasts, I was sharing my personal story. Others, I was just sharing my methodology and what I do and how I empower women. But either way, that's what I'm here to do, right?
Yeah.
Is to empower women in their purpose through wardrobe. So,
That's
yeah, the speaking I think is really important in developing your thought leadership, if you will. So,
absolutely. One final question, y'all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. If you've
yeah.
got questions for either me or Courtney, let me know. But one final question, and this is one of those that I know a lot of my clients are like, I don't want to niche down. I'm like, but I promise the runway gets so long when
Hmm.
you find your thing.
Hmm.
What words of wisdom would you give these women on what that niche down experience can be for them so that they can find that one purpose driven thing?
Right. I know that I'm not saying anything no one has heard before, which is if you're speaking to everybody, you're not speaking to anyone, right?
Yep.
So that's the importance of niching down and being very specific in your message. And sometimes people will, respond to my copy or things that I say, and they're like, here's a different perspective. Well, I'm called to steward my gift in this perspective, in this way, right? And that's the beauty of having so many different, like, we're in very similar paths, but we serve in different ways.
Yeah.
And so that's important. You can give your clients or my clients something that I can't give them,
Yeah.
and that's fine. That is the beauty of us being working in our gifts, like you said. And if you're not working in your gifting, you're not only, at a disadvantage for yourself, but then there are people out there who need what you have. They need your expertise, they need your leadership, they need what you have. And so you've just got to be confident about that and not afraid. Your people, your tribe, the people who are meant to be a part of your community, they will find you when you become very authentic in how you're showing up and how you're branding yourself.
Yes, I was telling somebody yesterday, I said, your gifts just need the right motivation. And it might
Mhm,
be because you see yourself in another person. And we should be making
mhm.
someone's path a little bit easier, right? Like that is,
Absolutely.
I truly believe what stewardship is all about. I went through the thing so you don't have to. Not
Right.
I went through the thing and I'm gonna create barriers to entry because you need to go through it too, right? I think that's such
Right.
a normal conversation when in fact
Mhm.
the opposite is true. It's like, how can I make your life easier so that you can make your journey the way it's supposed to be?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. I love that.
so good. Oh my goodness, Courtney, I this has been amazing. We could probably talk another hour.
I
Um,
know. I know.
could probably talk another hour. I'm gonna roll this up one more time, but for those who are listening or driving or calling in, how can they hear more about the work that you do?
Awesome. So I will tell you that LinkedIn is my primary platform. So if you want the best of what I have to offer, join me there because that's where you'll get it. But I've also started to press in different ways. I just became an executive contributor for Brains Magazine. So I'm doing more writing in addition to speaking, to create more visibility around, my thoughts and my framework and the way that I, am called to do things and serve and work with women. So I think, LinkedIn is definitely how you can get connected to me. You can get my newsletter, Executive Style and Success, which I, try to be consistent about producing weekly. Yeah, just lots of others. You'll can get access to my link tree, which will kind of give you all the other assets like my website and a devotional that I produce every Sunday, and all the other things that I'm a part of that, help the women and, really support and empower the women in my community. So I would love to have you come visit. Let's get connected. Yeah.
That's amazing. Ladies, I appreciate all the nuggets, Courtney. I had, like I said, my own battle with what I wanted to look like 3 years ago. I was like, okay, I was so used to wearing, blues and muted colors. And so that was my original brand was like this really like safe blue and this
Mhm.
modest green. And I was like, this is not it. And
Right.
so I tossed everything that I thought I knew to be true about me, started over, slapped on some purple lipstick, flipped on the camera, and there's been no looking back since. But that literally changed how I served
Yeah.
other people because I decided, right? Because this is a decision. I
Mhm.
decided to invest in what I look like. And I know some people say, most women only wear 30% of their closet. I
Mhm.
wear like 70% of my closet
I
because
love that
I
because you
talk
love it.
I love every piece, and every piece I buy is bought with such an intention. And this is not
Mhm.
to say that, I'm out here designer shopping every
Right.
week or label hunting, but it's like, do I love what I see when I
Mhm.
put this on? If not, I
Mhm.
should not be wearing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you shared that. I think that's the purest and the most the greatest example you could share of what this is all about, really. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, y'all, no live next week. Happy Thanksgiving for those of you all who are celebrating. December 4th, I'm going to try again to talk about what it looks like to build your keynote based on the Sermon on the Mount. I was so excited. I said the devil was busy because he knew that was a great message, but it's going to come on
Mhm.
December 4th.
That's right.
It's happening. It's happening. Courtney, thank you so much again for joining. Y'all,
Yeah.
I will see you on the other side. If you've got questions for me, when you have questions for me, uh, send me a DM. I'm always excited to talk with each and every one of you. Thank you
Yeah.
for joining.
Thank you for having me, Sybil. Thank you. I appreciate you.